and good evening. I'm your host Ben, and tonight you drift back to Victorian England, a time of gaslight and gentle horse-drawn rhythms, when even the strangest cures were administered with utmost calm. Take a slow, deep breath and allow the quiet murmurs of history to lull you. In this drowsy journey, you are the curious traveller, wandering through a dimly lit apothecary and a physician's parlour, exploring the quaint and boring medical treatments of the 19th century. Each remedy appears odd and obsolete to us now, yet each was once an ordinary comfort. Let the soft crackle of the hearth and the faint ticking of a clock in the corner keep time with our story. Settle in as we gently loop through these old cures, one by one, inviting you to relax deeper with every bygone prescription. You find yourself in a cozy Victorian apothecary shop on a quiet London street, sometime around the 1870s. The wooden door closes softly behind you, muffling the sounds of the city. Inside, the air is redolent of medicinal herbs and a hint of camphor and lavender. Shelves line the walls cluttered with glass jars, earthenware bottles, and brass instruments that glint in the low light of oil lamps. The chemist has stepped out, leaving you alone to wander and inspect these curiosities at your leisure. In the gentle hush, you run your fingers along handwritten labels: laudanum, treacle tonic, camphor oil, mustard poultice. Each item has a story, a routine as familiar to Victorians as our vitamin tablets are today. You take your time, tracing each odd remedy as if paging through a dull but comforting old book. The quiet is heavy and pleasant. You feel your breath deepen as you lean in to read a faded label on a large glass jar swimming with dark, sinuous shapes. Inside, a tangle of medicinal leeches twists slowly in amber fluid. By the warm glow of the lamp, you can just make out their slimy bodies curling and uncurling. It's a strangely hypnotic sight. In this era, leeches are trusted little physicians. Perhaps you recall a time when you had taken ill with a fever. In a softly lit bedroom, a doctor in a frock coat knelt by your bedside with one of these very jars. "Be still," he whispered kindly. You felt only a cool, wet brush against your skin as he placed a leech on your forearm. The creature latched on painlessly, contentedly drawing your blood. In Victorian belief, sickness often meant an excess of blood or humours, so the remedy was simple: let the bad blood out. Leeches became a fashionable way to do this, far less dramatic than opening a vein with a lancet. In fact, there was even a leech craze in the early 19th century. Doctors' orders for these bloodsuckers skyrocketed, and millions were used each year across Europe. The leech on your arm swelled greedily, its body warming and fattening with your blood. The doctor murmured that this would reduce your feverish inflammation, drawing out the excess as the leech had its fill. Strange as it may seem, you felt reassured by this routine. Many educated physicians swore by leeches for everything from high fevers to headaches, a gentle cure-all by subtraction, as it were. Once the leech had drunk its full, it naturally released its grip, and a trickle of blood continued from the bite. The leech's saliva, containing hirudine, ensured the wound bled freely for hours. A clean bandage and a bit of rest, and you were told you'd be better in no time. It's an odd treatment, yes, but in the stillness of that memory, perhaps you find it almost comforting. The soft routine of care, the doctor's quiet focus, the lamplight, the repetitive patter of reassurances, lulls you even now. You blink and return to the present moment in the apothecary, watching the leeches coil languidly in their jar. How trivial your fever seems now, drained into the contented little creature that once helped heal you. With a slight shudder and a sleepy half-smile, you place the jar back on the shelf, the leeches within settling back to their slow spirals. Your eyes wander to a neatly folded bundle of cloths on the counter, alongside a ceramic bowl and a tin of yellow powder. A sharp, vinegary tang tickles your nose. Mustard plaster, a staple of Victorian households for the common cold. In your mind's eye, you see a domestic scene. You sitting in bed under a mountain of quilts, a thick woolen scarf around your neck, coughing softly. The house is hushed in the night, save for the rasp of your breathing. A kindly figure, your mother perhaps, or an attentive nurse, is mixing ground mustard seed with flour and warm water in that ceramic bowl. The paste is then smeared onto a square of linen or flannel. You catch a whiff of the mustard's pungency as she brings the plaster over and gently lays it on your chest. It feels warm, then hotter and hotter until it's almost a sting, but it's a good, relieving burn. Victorians believed that the mustard's heat, drawing blood to the skin, would scatter the congestion in your lungs and ease your cough. This counter-irritant therapy was considered the gold standard for treating a cough or cold. Indeed, a mustard plaster was practically a first resort for any stubborn chest congestion or even aches and pains. The warmth sinks deep, soothing your cramping chest muscles. Just a few minutes more, your caregiver whispers, checking under the edge of the cloth to be sure your skin is reddening but not blistering. One had to be careful. Left on too long, a mustard poultice could raise angry blisters or even mild burns on the skin. But in the right dose, that sharp heat was believed to draw out illness, as though the mustard could lure the sickness to the surface and out of the body. The room fills with the sharp sinus-clearing scent of mustard vapor. Perhaps it even makes your eyes water a touch, but you feel your breathing ease, your chest lightening. After a while, the plaster is removed, and a cool salve is rubbed on to calm the irritated skin. You're left drowsy, enveloped in a comforting warm tingling. Many a Victorian child and adult fell asleep with that tingling on their chest, the smell of mustard lingering in the air, believing that come morning, the cough would be chased away. Standing here in the apothecary, you inhale softly, almost imagining a phantom hint of that mustard smell from long ago. It mixes with the other odors, a sleepy medley of curatives. Such simple routines, repeated in countless homes, feel reassuring in their very simplicity. You give a slow nod of acknowledgement to the little tin of mustard powder, as if to thank it for its service, and move on. On a polished oak shelf at eye level, you notice a collection of dark glass medicine bottles. Their labels, handwritten in elegant script, announce various tonics and syrups. You pick up one small bottle and hold it to the lamplight. The viscous liquid inside gleams a deep amber brown. A printed label calls it Golden Treacle Tonic for coughs and ailments. A spoonful before bed. Victorians had a deep fondness for treacle, that thick molasses syrup, as a base for medicines. The sweetness helped mask bitter or foul-tasting ingredients, making potions more palatable. As you uncork the bottle, the heavy, sugary aroma brings to mind a memory. A spoonful of treacle laced with sulfur, being offered to you as a child. Yes, brimstone and treacle, the old household cure-all. In that memory, the kitchen is warm on a spring morning. Sunlight slants through the window as your family prepares the dreaded seasonal tonic. A jar of black treacle sits on the table, and beside it, a paper packet of yellow powdered sulfur, brimstone. Your mother mixes them into a gooey concoction. This was the famed spring tonic, meant to purify the blood after a long winter of rich foods and little exercise. For generations it was believed that a course of sulfur and molasses for a few days would cleanse the system of any impurities. Children often received this unappetizing treat, and you recall grimacing at the first taste. The treacle's cloying sweetness couldn't quite hide the eggy bitterness of the sulfur. Brimstone and treacle, the cure for whatever ails you, they would say. It was touted as a laxative, a skin cleanser, a remedy for joint pains, truly a catch-all panacea in the Victorian home. Even literature of the time made mention of it. Charles Dickens wrote of brimstone and treacle in his stories, showing how common it was in daily life. You swallow the dose dutifully in your reminiscence, shuddering at the taste. Perhaps a bit of dry humor crosses your mind. How Victorian children must have dreaded the phrase, "Open up for your brimstone and treacle." Indeed, in the early 20th century, Mary Poppins would famously reference that unpleasant tonic as the hallmark of a strict old-fashioned nanny. Yet despite the flavor, or because of it, there is something soothingly familiar in the ritual. After taking your spoonful, you're given a small peppermint or a sip of water as a reward, a sense of accomplishment. You've done your duty, and hopefully earned another illness-free season. Back in the apothecary, you feel a fond sympathy for those children and for your younger self. On the shelf, the golden treacle tonic seems benign, even inviting compared to raw brimstone and treacle. You imagine it might contain some herbs like horehound or licorice for cough, all blended into the sugary syrup. Another bottle reads, treacle and laudanum syrup. For calming the nerves, adults 20 drops, children 5 drops. A stark reminder that many Victorian tonics hid more potent ingredients behind the sweet treacle. You gently set the bottle down, noticing how sticky the shelf is around it. Years of spilled molasses-like syrup, perhaps. A stray thought crosses your mind. The treacle itself was metaphorically like these Victorian cures, thick, sweet, and trying hard to cover up the bitterness underneath. Next, your gaze falls upon a squat, cobalt blue bottle with a worn label that reads, Tincture of Opium, Laudanum. Its cork is tied down with twine, and a tiny measuring dropper hangs alongside. You pick it up carefully. Inside, the liquid tints the glass a reddish brown. Of all Victorian remedies, laudanum might be the most ubiquitous and the most quietly powerful. A hush comes over the shop, and perhaps in your mind, as you recall the heavy, drowsy odor of this potion. Laudanum was opium dissolved in alcohol, about 10% opium by weight. In effect, it was morphine and codeine in a bottle, though the Victorians didn't know those exact terms. What they did know was that laudanum was astonishingly effective for easing pain, diarrhea, coughing, and inducing sleep. It was cheap, often cheaper than gin or wine, and sold everywhere. Chemists, certainly, but also ordinary pubs, grocers, even confectioners would sell a bit of laudanum if you asked. You uncork the bottle and imagine the bitter, spicy aroma. Some laudanum mixtures had added flavorings like cinnamon or saffron. The scent itself is subtle, but it carries with it countless stories. Perhaps you remember a night of raging toothache, where a few drops of laudanum on a cotton wad, tucked against the gum, soothed the pain marvelously. Or a bout of dysentery during a summer voyage. Laudanum in your tea quelled the cramps and saved you countless trips to the privy. Physicians and families alike relied on this mother of all medicines. They would administer a few drops for anything from migraines to melancholy to women's troubles. Laudanum calmed agitated nerves and brought on velvety sleep when nothing else would. In that age before modern anesthetics and antidepressants, this amber tincture was a godsend. Even crying infants were not exempt from its grace. A few drops of laudanum-laced cordial, such as the famous Godfrey's cordial or Mrs. Winslow's soothing syrup, would quiet a colicky baby and let the whole household rest. Yes, it's startling to think of now, but it was not uncommon to dose babies and children with opium concoctions to sedate them. The Victorian mind saw nothing amiss. After all, laudanum was simply another herbal extract, a gift from nature's pharmacy. You may recall being given a spoon of soothing syrup yourself as a child on a particularly fretful night, its sickly sweet taste with a bitter undercurrent, followed by hours of dreamless slumber. Many great writers and poets of the era were intimately acquainted with laudanum's embrace. Samuel Taylor Coleridge, Charles Dickens, and others were known to partake, but the narrator's tone remains calm and non-judgmental. Addiction and excess are stories for another time. Here we focus only on laudanum's place as a trusted friend in the medicine chest. In fact, even Queen Victoria herself was said to keep laudanum among her personal remedies for pain relief. You carefully recork the bottle. The shop seems a tad hazy now, as if the laudanum spirit exerts a subtle soporific influence on the very air. If you listen, you can almost hear the advice from an old pharmacist. 10 drops in a bit of water, no more. That should settle your nerves, dear. In this safe reverie, you feel a kinship with those long-ago souls seeking relief in this bottle. How many aching brows were soothed, how many sleepless nights turned to gently snoring ones, thanks to those few drops of opium tincture. A gentle wave of gratitude washes through you, not for the drug itself, but for the solace it represented in a time when options were few. You place the laudanum back among the apothecary's staples, its presence as ordinary and accepted in this world as aspirin is in ours. As you step away from the medicine shelves, you catch sight of a porcelain bust set near the back counter. A human head, life-sized, marked with puzzling little inscriptions and dividing lines. Curious, you draw closer and realize this is a phrenology head, a model used to demonstrate the locations of supposed mental faculties in the brain. Ah, phrenology, the Victorian art of reading personality, character, even health, from the bumps and hollows of the skull. A faint smile comes to you, recalling the time you visited a phrenologist's parlor out of sheer curiosity. It was a quiet afternoon in a London side street. You remember the consulting room, walls adorned with charts of the cranium, each region labeled with Victorian fonts. Benevolence, acquisitiveness, amativeness, caution, dozens of traits. The phrenologist, an earnest gentleman with spectacles, invited you to sit in a high-backed chair. With the light of a broad window falling on you, he began to gently palpate your skull, his fingers methodically feeling for any prominence or depression. It was oddly relaxing, like a slow scalp massage, though now and then he murmured comments that made you stifle a chuckle. "You have a well-developed bump of philoprogenitiveness," he said softly, meaning love of children, as his fingertips found a bulge near the crown of your head. "And here, the region of hope is pronounced. You are of an optimistic bent, I wager." You merely hummed in response, nearly lulled to sleep by his droning voice and the light touch on your hair. In Victorian England, phrenology had captured the public imagination. It wasn't seen as a mere parlor trick then, but a cutting-edge blend of science and self-improvement. For a few shillings, one could have one's head examined and walk away with advice on what professions or habits suited their natural character. Even the highest in society were not immune to the fascination. It said that Queen Victoria and Prince Albert even allowed a phrenologist to read the heads of their children out of curiosity. You recall the phrenologist showing you an elegant chart afterward, a sort of map of your mind's strengths and weaknesses. You see, your combativeness is moderate, not overly confrontational. and your order is high. You likely enjoy neatness and organization, he explained. It was mostly gentle flattery, delivered in a scholarly tone. You nodded along sleepily. Whether you believed any of it didn't matter. The experience itself was oddly comforting. It was a way of reflecting on oneself under the guise of medical analysis, and the Victorians found comfort in the idea that every virtue or vice had a tangible place on the skull. Perhaps if a flaw was found, say a deficiency in firmness, or a small hope bump, one could take steps to cultivate that trait, like exercising a weak muscle. In that sense, phrenology was almost a life coach session. The phrenologist's fingers tapping your skull now fade back into memory. You blink at the porcelain head in the apothecary, tracing one of its cracks with your eyes. How quaint it seems now, yet in the hush of this shop you can appreciate why people found it reassuring in its own peculiar way. It gave them a narrative about themselves, a ritualized introspection, and as a late Victorian patient seeking solace, perhaps you too found a kind of calm in that process, a structured, methodical examination that was non-invasive and even pleasantly soporific. You let out a contented sigh, realizing that even odd pseudosciences had their gentle charm in an era starved for understanding of the mind. With a respectful pat on the porcelain cranium, purely in imagination, you leave the phrenology bust to its dusty vigil. Wandering onward, you notice a strange apparatus displayed in a mahogany case, a small brass and oak device with wires, dials, and a hand crank. A placard inside the case calls it Dr. Pulvermacher's electric belt, electro-galvanic invigorator. How intriguing, an electrical cure. The late Victorian years were rife with these gadgets, all promising health through the new miracle of electricity. You recall seeing adverts in the newspaper. They dubbed those times the electric era with unabashed optimism, flickers of memory. Perhaps you even ordered one of these belts by post, or tried a session at an electrotherapy salon. In the shop's mellow light, you imagine how it worked. The belt, a series of linked voltaic cells and coils, would be worn around the waist or ailing body part. Once activated, a mild current would flow, producing a gentle tingling shock that coursed through the body. Victorians were electrified by the idea, pardon the thought, that this invisible force could stimulate life and cure disease. There was an enormous mystique around electricity in medicine. Some believed it might even revive the dead, inspired by the experiments that led Mary Shelley to write Frankenstein decades earlier. By mid-century, serious doctors in Paris and London were exploring galvanism for issues like muscle paralysis and pain relief. And by the late 1800s, smaller, portable devices became available to the public. Electric belts, battery-powered combs, electrified water baths, and more, all marketed as one-stop cures for everything from rheumatism to nervous exhaustion. You gently place a hand on the belt device and feel its cool metal studs. A memory forms. You, standing in your night clothes, strapping a similar contraption around your waist before bed. The pamphlet instructions advise to wear it at night until your system becomes charged with reviving voltage. You complied, hoping to cure those vague nervous complaints that modern life in 19th century London had given you. Maybe some fatigue, a bout of melancholy, or the lingering ache in your back from long hours of work. As you settled into bed, you felt the faint buzz of current, like gentle tickling pricks on your skin. It wasn't unpleasant at all. In fact, it was oddly reassuring, as if the device were a silent caregiver attending to you through the night. Advertisements promised that such belts could restore manly vigor, relieve female hysteria, improve circulation, and banish insomnia. Grand claims, to be sure. In reality, beyond a placebo tingle, most of these devices did little, something even a few skeptical doctors pointed out at the time, labeling them egregious quackery. But here, in the privacy of your recollection, none of that matters. What matters is that scene, you lying in a dark bedroom lit by a single gas lamp turned low, the slight hum of the galvanic belt lulling you. You believed you were doing something proactive for your health, something cutting edge and modern, and that belief itself was soothing. As the mild electrical pulses spread warmth over your abdomen, you found your eyes growing heavy. Maybe it was just the day catching up to you, or maybe the belt truly did relax your tense muscles. Either way, you slept soundly, convinced that in the morning you'd feel a bit more charged up for the day. Back in the apothecary, you give the exhibit case a slow nod. There's a dry humor in it, this clunky device with its pseudo-scientific bravado, but also a recognition. People have always sought harmless ways to comfort themselves. A mild electric gadget that did nothing was perhaps better than a harsh medicine that did harm. Indeed, some Victorian observers noted that these galvanic gizmos provided a conservative, safe treatment option at a time when many real medicines were quite toxic. You continue browsing, passing other electrotherapy curios, an electrified hairbrush here, a magneto handheld shock device there, each a relic of that hopeful era, when electricity was the gentle cure-all du jour. By mid-century, serious doctors in Paris and London were exploring galvanism for issues like muscle paralysis and pain relief. And by the late 1800s, smaller portable devices became available to the public. Electric belts, battery-powered combs, electrified water baths, and more, all marketed as one-stop cures for everything from rheumatism to nervous exhaustion. You gently place a hand on the belt device and feel its cool metal studs. A memory forms. You, standing in your night clothes, strapping a similar contraption around your waist before bed. The pamphlet instructions advise to wear it at night until your system becomes charged with reviving voltage. You complied, hoping to cure those vague nervous complaints that modern life in 19th century London had given you. Maybe some fatigue, a bout of melancholy, or the lingering ache in your back from long hours of work. As you settled into bed, you felt the faint buzz of current, like gentle tickling pricks on your skin. It wasn't unpleasant at all. In fact, it was oddly reassuring, as if the device were a silent caregiver attending to you through the night. Advertisements promised that such belts could restore manly vigor, relieve female hysteria, improve circulation, and banish insomnia. Grand claims, to be sure. In reality, beyond a placebo tingle, most of these devices did little, something even a few skeptical doctors pointed out at the time, labeling them egregious quackery. But here, in the privacy of your recollection, none of that matters. What matters is that scene, you lying in a dark bedroom, lit by a single gas lamp turned low, the slight hum of the galvanic belt lulling you. You believed you were doing something proactive for your health, something cutting edge and modern, and that belief itself was soothing. As the mild electrical pulses spread warmth over your abdomen, you found your eyes growing heavy. Maybe it was just the day catching up to you, or maybe the belt truly did relax your tense muscles. Either way, you slept soundly, convinced that in the morning, you'd feel a bit more charged up for the day. Back in the apothecary, you give the exhibit case a slow nod. There's a dry humor in it, this clunky device with its pseudo-scientific bravado, but also a recognition. People have always sought harmless ways to comfort themselves. A mild electric gadget that did nothing was perhaps better than a harsh medicine that did harm. Indeed, some Victorian observers noted that these galvanic gizmos provided a conservative, safe treatment option at a time when many real medicines were quite toxic. You continue browsing, passing other electrotherapy curios, an electrified hairbrush here, a magneto handheld shock device there, each a relic of that hopeful era when electricity was the gentle cure-all du jour. Near the shop's entrance, your attention is drawn by a small display of smelling salts in ornate crystal bottles. They sparkle a bit, even in the low light. You pick up one bottle, its faceted glass with a silver cap pierced with holes, a Victorian vinaigrette. Inside, a sponge soaked in a sharp concoction awaits. Suddenly you recall a vivid scene, a crowded ballroom, or perhaps a stuffy church service, anywhere the air was warm and the corsets were tight. You are standing amidst a crowd when a wave of dizziness washes over you. The edges of your vision blur, you feel lightheaded and faint. This was not uncommon in Victorian life, whether from tight lacing, heated rooms, or the sheer drama of emotion, a genteel person might swoon on occasion. In your memory, you sink onto a chaise as concerned whispers arise around you. She's fainted. But almost immediately comes the calm, practiced response. Bring the smelling salts. A friend or attendant produces a tiny bottle, much like the one you hold now, and waves it under your nose. A pungent, acrid odor assaults your senses. It's like a slap made of smell, akin to the sting of strong ammonia, or a dash of household bleach, with perhaps a note of lavender or spice trying to civilize it. The effect is instantaneous. You gasp, your head jerks back, and your eyes flutter open. That powerful ammonia vapor irritated your nasal membranes and lungs, triggering an involuntary intake of breath that jolted you back to consciousness. As you come to, you find the world returning to focus and a gentle flutter of a fan cooling your face. All around, people relax. A fainting spell so gracefully handled was hardly cause for alarm. In fact, it was almost expected of a delicate lady or an overheated gentleman from time to time. Smelling salts were ubiquitous. Nearly every well-to-do woman carried a decorated vial in her handbag or reticule for just such moments. Even policemen, constables on the street, were known to keep smelling salts on hand to revive swooning citizens. Doctors, too, counted on them after a patient's painful procedure or when recovering from anesthesia. Back in the apothecary, you carefully uncap the crystal bottle, mindful not to actually inhale its contents too closely. A soft sniff confirms it's still potent after all these years. Your eyes tingle and water slightly at the briefest whiff, the ghost of ammonia. You smile, recalling how quintessentially Victorian the image is. A fainted lady on a chaise, a solicitor's friend with vinaigrette in hand. It's almost a cliché, yet it had a real physiological purpose. The Victorians even gave these salts genteel nicknames like Lady Revivers. In a way, they were a kindly shock to the system, a sharp reset for the senses. You take comfort in the routine of it, the knowledge that if you were to swoon, someone would revive you with a familiar brisk sniff of ammonia. No elaborate intervention needed, just this small aromatic jolt. Such remedies make the unpredictable body feel manageable. With a tiny nod of thanks to the spirits of hartshorn in the bottle, you replace the cap and set it down. The smelling salts, with their abrupt efficacy, stand in contrast to the slow balms and tonics, yet they too were part of the ordinary rhythm of care. Now you have toured most corners of this quiet shop of remedies. Your basket of memories is nearly full. Outside, night has deepened, and through the apothecary's window you see the street lamps flickering with gaslight, illuminating a light fog hanging in the air. The city is slowing down, and so are you. Before you leave, the chemist's cat, a plump tabby, rubs against your ankle and purrs. You bend to give it a slow stroke, feeling the soft fur and hearing that soothing rumble. In this moment you realize how sleepy these old histories have made you. Each bizarre treatment, leeches, plasters, tonics, shocks and salts, has been like a gentle chapter in a bedtime story, each one easing your mind a bit more, grounding you in the past and away from present worries. What seemed weird or silly in the light of day becomes oddly reassuring by lamplight. The Victorians had a remedy for everything, however misguided, and there's comfort in that thoroughness. If you had a problem, by Jove, they had a solution, be it a mustard compress, or a dose of treacle, or a whiff of ammonia. The solutions might not have always worked, but the ritual of caring was always there. As you step out of the apothecary, you carry this sense of Victorian calm with you. Imagine now that you are walking slowly down the cobblestone street towards your home, a small oil lantern in hand to guide you. The cool night breeze carries the distant clip-clop of a horse carriage and the faint smell of coal smoke from a chimney. You feel the slight weight of your purchases in a cloth bag, perhaps a fresh bottle of laudanum, a tin of mustard, and some smelling salt capsules, ready to stock your own medicine chest. It gives you a sense of security to have them, much like a modern person might feel reassured having a well-stocked first aid kit. Overhead, the stars peer through the haze. You take unhurried steps, each one in sync with your steady breathing. The routine of the day's end in Victorian times was not so different from now. One by one, the household will be put to bed with small comforts and cures. You picture it as you arrive home, a fire gently crackling in the hearth, casting dancing shadows on patterned wallpaper, a lamp turned down low on the bedside table. You change into your night clothes, perhaps a long cotton nightshirt, and ease yourself into a high, soft bed. Before sleep, you decide to partake in one final Victorian remedy, a very ordinary one, to ensure pleasant dreams. From your bedside cabinet, you withdraw a bottle of cod liver oil and a jar of blackberry jam. As unappetizing as cod liver oil is, you know it's considered a boon for health, rich in nutrients to keep away the rickets and consumption that lurk in the world outside. It was heralded in its time as a near miraculous supplement, a cure for many ailments, except that one had to tolerate its highly disagreeable taste. By habit, you've learned to take it with a spoon of sweet jam to blunt the fishy flavor. So there in the lamplight, you pour a spoonful of the thick golden oil. It glistens, and a faint fish odor rises from it. Steeling yourself, you swallow it down in one gulp, chasing it immediately with a spoon of jam. The burst of sugary fruit tries to dominate, but a hint of brine and fish lingers on your palate. No matter, you've been through worse tastes, brimstone and treacle for one. A small price to pay for robust health, as the advertisements say. You cap the bottle and settle back against your pillows. The oil settles in your stomach with a comforting heaviness. Perhaps it's placebo, or perhaps the vitamin-rich elixir truly is already working to strengthen your bones and soothe any inflammation. Either way, you believe in it, and that is enough for now. All around your bedroom are the quiet signals of a Victorian night routine. An earthenware hot water bottle at your feet keeps them warm. A soft flannel is wrapped around your throat. You did this to prevent any night chills or miasmas from giving you a sore throat by morning. On the nightstand is that trusty bottle of laudanum. You needed only a few drops earlier to calm a nagging cough, and now it stands by in case pain should trouble you in the night. The residue of its opiate calm already infuses your limbs with a pleasant heaviness, A faint aroma of mustard and menthol clings to the air. You rubbed a bit of warming balm on your joints to ease that rheumatic-y twinge. All is prepared. All cures have been tried. All comforts arranged. It is a scene repeated in countless forms across Victorian households at day's end. Self-care woven from superstition, experiment, and earnest hope. You snuggle down under a weighty feather duvet. The room's sounds grow very still. Only the rhythmic ticking of your bedside clock and the slow, even expansion of your lungs as you breathe. The clock ticks like a gentle metronome, each tick matching your heartbeat, each tock matching the sigh of your exhale. In this quietude, you think fondly, almost sleepily, of the various peculiar treatments you've explored tonight. How each one, no matter how weird or obsolete, was someone's way of saying, "I care that you feel better." A doctor applying a leech, a mother spreading a mustard plaster, a friend thrusting smelling salts under your nose. These were acts of care and concern. In the end, perhaps that's the true medicine of this boring history, the human comfort that came with each remedy. The specific methods may have been hit or miss, but the intention to heal and soothe was real and unwavering. And that intention, like a soft warm blanket, wraps around you now. Your eyes grow heavier as you stare at the low flame of the lamp. It gutters slightly, and you decide to let it be. Maybe you'll leave it on just a bit longer, as its soft glow is so comforting. Outside, the last sounds of the Victorian night fade. A carriage wheel in the distance, a lone call of a watchman on his round. You feel as if time itself has slowed to this drowsy, honeyed pace. In your mind floats an image of a kindly old apothecary, smiling as he hands you a parcel of remedies, saying, "There now, you'll be right as rain. Just follow the instructions and rest." You've followed the instructions well. You've journeyed through the cures, and now only rest remains. Breathe in deeply through your nose, and you might catch one last medley of scents, a hint of lavender from your pillow, a wisp of lingering ammonia and vinegar from the salts, a trace of sweet treacle. Breathe out any tension, any lingering wakefulness. You've arrived at the end of our slow historical tour, and nothing more needs to be done. The odd prescriptions of Victorian England have had their say, and they too settle down, curling up like contented cats in the corners of your mind. It's time to let go of the waking world, as easily as a patient finally lets go of worry after the doctor has been and gone. If you like, imagine that Victorian doctor tiptoeing out of your room now. After checking on you one last time, he quietly clicks the door shut, leaving you safe and sound. The remedies he applied, real or not, have done their part in ushering you toward healing sleep. You are warm, you are loved, and you are gently drifting off. In this state, you may even dream of quaint apothecary shops or soft-spoken physicians with their odd tools, but those dreams will only carry you deeper into rest. There is a profound peace in knowing that you've taken care of yourself with a little help from history's quirks, and now your body can surrender to slumber. Feel your eyelids growing heavy, the shadows in your room or in your mind flicker and dance, then lengthen and grow still. Let each breath you take carry you further into a calm, restorative sleep. You have nothing else to do, nowhere else to be. Like a Victorian invalid cosseted in blankets by a warm fire, you can simply be, here and now, and allow the night to heal you in its silent way. Thank you for accompanying me on this leisurely stroll through Victorian remedies. These truly boring bits of history, told gently, have served their purpose. They've bridged the busy present and the restful past, and brought you to this threshold of dreams. Now, step across that threshold, let the old lamp glow fade, and the cool darkness of sleep enfold you. Sleep well, dear traveller. May your slumber be deep and healing, untouched by any of the ailments of the day. In the morning, you'll awake refreshed, perhaps with a peculiar recollection of leeches and treacle, or perhaps with no memory at all of when you slipped off to dreamland. Either way, it's all right. For now, the weird and wonderful cures of Victorian England bid you good night. Rest now. The past watches over you kindly, and all is well. Good night, and sweet dreams.